Daniel moved carefully through the broken streets, holding the small alien child close to his chest. The ruins stretched endlessly, silent but heavy with memories of what once had been. A town full of life, now nothing more than shadows. The child stirred in his arms, pressing its small face against him as if hiding from the world. He could feel its trembling, and every shiver deepened his resolve to keep it safe. The night grew colder. Daniel scanned the darkness for any sign of movement, knowing danger could come at any moment. He had no idea how far away his unit was or if they were even searching in this direction. His only thought was to find a safe place for the child. He spotted a partly standing building ahead, its roof half gone but its walls still strong enough to block the wind. With quiet steps, he carried the child inside and set it gently on a patch of dry ground. The child looked up at him with wide eyes, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Daniel smiled softly, trying to offer comfort. "We'll rest here for a bit," he whispered, though he knew the words might mean nothing to the child. Still, his tone was calm, and sometimes tone mattered more than words. He sat near the entrance, keeping watch. His body was tired, but his mind stayed sharp. He thought of his own family far away, of his younger sister who once clung to him when storms shook their home. The way the alien child had clung to him felt the same. War, he realized, had tried to paint the world in black and white, but moments like this proved the truth was never so simple. Hours passed. The child finally drifted into a light sleep, its breathing soft and steady. Daniel closed his eyes just for a moment, listening to the quiet night. That peace did not last. A sound broke the silence, a faint crunch of rubble beneath heavy feet. His eyes shot open and he tensed. Shadows moved outside the broken doorway. More than one. He could hear low voices, speaking in the alien tongue. His heart raced. The enemy had found them. Daniel looked at the child, still sleeping, unaware of the danger. He knew he could not run. The footsteps grew louder until 3 figures stepped into view, tall, armored, and armed. Their glowing eyes fixed on him immediately, then shifted to the small form beside him. The lead warrior barked something in their language, pointing his weapon. The meaning was clear enough. They wanted the child. Perhaps they thought he had taken it hostage. Daniel raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm, but he did not move away from the child. The warrior stepped closer, the weapon now aimed directly at the young one. Time slowed in Daniel's mind. He saw the energy charge building at the tip of the weapon. He saw the child stirring awake, its eyes blinking open in fear. And he knew, in that instant, what he had to do. Without thinking, Daniel threw himself in front of the child, spreading his arms wide. A bright flash lit the room as the weapon fired. Pain shot through his side, hot and sharp, forcing the air from his lungs. He staggered, but did not fall. His body had absorbed the strike, shielding the little one completely. The child let out a startled cry, clinging to him with desperate strength. Daniel gritted his teeth, breathing hard. The pain was real, but stronger than the pain was the certainty that he had made the only choice his heart would allow. He turned his head slightly and whispered down to the child, "You're safe, I promise." The alien warriors froze. Their weapons lowered slightly, their glowing eyes shifting with confusion. None of them had expected this. A human soldier, their enemy, taking a blow meant for one of their young. They exchanged uncertain glances, as though silently asking each other what they were witnessing. Daniel swayed on his feet but refused to move away from the child. His arms wrapped tighter around the small body, his eyes fixed on the warriors. He was not challenging them. He was not even defending himself. He was simply protecting the little life behind him with every ounce of strength he had left. One of the warriors muttered something, softer this time, almost questioning. Another lowered his weapon completely. They had seen sacrifice before, but not like this, not from the enemy they had been taught to hate. The child buried its face against Daniel's chest, tiny hands gripping his clothing. Its muffled cries echoed in the quiet building. Daniel closed, his eyes for a moment drawing in a shaky breath. The pain pulsed through him, but he pushed it aside. The child mattered more. Always more. For what felt like an eternity, the room stood still. 3 warriors, a wounded man, and a child caught between 2 worlds. Then, slowly, one of the warriors stepped back. Another followed. The leader kept his eyes locked on Daniel. For a long time, studying him as though trying to understand. Finally, he lowered his weapon as well and spoke in a low voice that carried both authority and respect. The 3 turned and left, their heavy steps fading into the night. Daniel sank to his knees, relief flooding him, though the pain in his side grew worse. The child pulled back slightly, looking up at him with shining eyes filled with both fear and wonder. Its small hand reached out, touching the wound as if trying to understand why he had done it. Daniel managed a weak smile. "I told you. No harm will come to you." The child's eyes glistened, and for the first time, Daniel saw something more than fear in them. Trust. Fragile, new, but real. The bond between them had been sealed in that single moment of sacrifice. The night air grew colder, but Daniel no longer felt it. He felt only the warmth of the child leaning against him, the tiny heartbeat fluttering like a bird beneath his hand. Somewhere in the distance he thought he heard other voices, louder this time, approaching fast. He knew more were coming, perhaps soldiers, perhaps someone far more powerful. But he also knew that no matter who came, his choice had already been made. He had stood between danger and the innocent. He had taken the blow meant for another. And though his body ached and his future was uncertain, his heart was steady. He was no longer just a soldier of war. He was a guardian. And that single act of selflessness would echo farther than he could ever imagine. The night was quiet again after the warriors had left, but Daniel knew that silence could not last. He sat against the cracked wall of the ruined building, his breath uneven, one hand pressed against his side where the burn from the weapon still throbbed. The child rested in his arms, eyes half closed but still watching him, as though afraid he might disappear if it blinked for too long. Daniel whispered softly, more to keep the child calm than for himself. "It's all right. You're safe." The child made a small sound, a hum almost like a sigh, and leaned closer into his chest. That small act gave him the strength to keep sitting upright despite the pain. He knew they could not stay there forever. The warriors who had walked away had not done so out of weakness. They had left because something larger was coming. He could feel it in the stillness of the air, the way the night seemed to hold its breath. Someone of importance was on the way. The sound reached him first. Steps, but not hurried, not uncertain. Strong, measured steps that carried weight and command. He looked toward the doorway, and there she was. She was tall, her form wrapped in armor that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Her presence filled the space before she even spoke. Her eyes, glowing with the same light as the child's, swept over the room, and when they landed on Daniel, they lingered. She did not rush forward, but there was no mistaking who she was. This was not just another soldier. This was someone far greater, the child's mother. The child reacted before Daniel could move. With a sudden burst of energy, it wriggled in his arms and reached out, making a soft sound that carried both joy and relief. Daniel let go carefully, and the child ran the short distance to her. The woman bent down, gathering the little one into her arms. Her face, though firm and regal, softened as she pressed her forehead gently against the child's. Daniel watched silently, his chest tightening. He had guessed right. This was no ordinary parent. The way the warriors outside had bowed their heads when she passed, the way even the night seemed to hold back for her, it all made sense. She was their queen. And this child, the small being he had risked everything to protect, was her heir. The queen's eyes lifted from her child and fixed on Daniel again. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of gratitude, suspicion, and something deeper. She spoke, her voice calm but carrying an authority that seemed to echo in the walls. The words were in her own tongue, yet Daniel felt as though he understood. She was asking the question burning in her heart. Why? Daniel's throat was dry. He shifted slightly, wincing at the pain, but he kept his gaze steady. Because, he began slowly, his voice low but firm, no child should suffer. Not yours. Not anyone's. The queen tilted her head, studying him. Her child clung tightly to her, but its glowing eyes turned back toward Daniel as though unwilling to let the connection between them break. The queen noticed this. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she stepped closer, carrying the child in her arms, and stopped just in front of him. Daniel felt the weight of her presence stronger than any force he had ever known. Yet beneath the strength, he saw something else, a flicker of emotion, a mother's heart struggling to understand. She reached out one hand, not to harm him, but to touch lightly near the wound on his side. Her fingers glowed faintly and warmth spread through him. The pain dulled, not gone, but eased enough for him to breathe more easily. Daniel realized she was not only a queen, but someone with the power to heal. He met her eyes again, and in that gaze he saw questions she had not spoken aloud. Why would an enemy risk his life for her child? What kind of soldier was he to choose compassion over survival? Daniel gave her the only truth he had. War teaches us to see enemies everywhere, he said quietly. But when I saw your child, I didn't see an enemy. I saw someone small, afraid and alone I couldn't turn away. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. She was searching him as though trying to see beyond his words into his very soul. The child in her arms reached again toward Daniel, a soft sound of longing slipping from its lips. That sound seemed to pierce her heart. She looked down at her, little one, then back at him. The room felt heavy with silence. The queen finally spoke again, her tone quieter, carrying not command but wonder. The words were not ones Daniel knew, but he understood the feeling behind them. Gratitude. The warriors outside entered cautiously, their eyes flicking between the queen and Daniel. They looked ready to act, waiting for her command. She raised her hand slightly, and they stopped, lowering their heads in respect. No harm would come to him, not while she stood there. Daniel's body relaxed slightly, though his heart still beat fast. He had expected anger, maybe even punishment. Instead, he found himself under the gaze of a mother who was beginning to see him in a light he had never imagined possible. The queen shifted the child to one arm and extended her other hand toward him. At first, Daniel did not move. He was not sure what she meant, but the child's soft voice urged him, and with effort he reached up and placed his hand in hers. Her grip was strong, but it was not harsh. It was steady, grounding, almost as though she was saying, "I see what you have done, and it matters." Daniel swallowed hard. He had never felt so small and yet so significant at the same time. The queen, the mother of the child he had protected, stood before him not as an enemy but as someone touched deeply by his choice. She helped him to his feet, her eyes never leaving his. For the first time since the war began, Daniel felt something shift in the air. Not the weight of battle, but the possibility of understanding. The child nestled against her, but its glowing eyes still searched for him, and when it saw he was standing again, it let out a soft sound of happiness. Daniel smiled weakly, his heart full despite his weakness. The queen looked at her child, then back at him, and in that simple exchange, something unspoken passed between them. It was not a treaty. It was not peace for their worlds. It was something smaller yet just as powerful, the recognition of humanity in its purest form, shared between two beings who had every reason to hate but chose not to. The night outside seemed different now. The ruins still stood, the war still raged somewhere beyond, but within that broken place, a mother, her child, and a human soldier had begun to weave a story no one else could have imagined. And as the queen turned slightly, signaling her warriors to bring them out of the ruins, Daniel realized that his journey was far from over. He had protected a child. Now he stood face to face with the child's mother, a queen whose heart had been touched in ways that would change everything that came next. The day came sooner than Daniel expected. He was summoned to the great hall where the queen stood before her court. Her child was by her side, clinging to her hand, eyes wide but calm. Warriors lined the walls, and elders sat in silence. their faces etched with the wisdom of years. Daniel walked slowly into the center, every step echoing. He felt the weight of countless eyes on him, each gaze questioning, measuring. He stood straight despite the pressure, his heart steady. The Queen's gaze met his. She spoke, her voice carrying across the hall with strength that left no space for doubt. Though Daniel could not understand her language fully, the meaning was clear. She was recounting what had happened. The child's near danger. His choice to shield it. The wound he carried. The elders murmured among themselves. Some looked uncertain, others skeptical. But when the Queen lifted her child's small hand and guided it toward him, the room grew silent. The child stepped forward and placed its glowing hand in his, smiling with pure trust. Gasps rippled through the hall. The Queen raised her voice again, stronger now. Her words carried not only authority but emotion. Daniel could not understand every word, but he understood her eyes. She was declaring something powerful, a choice. He had expected this moment. Perhaps she would release him, allowing him to return to his people. Or perhaps she would declare him a prisoner, kept under watch. But her gaze told him it was neither. It was something greater. She stepped down from her place, standing before him with the full weight of her people watching. She spoke slowly, each word deliberate. Though he could not know the language, her child's joyful laugh filled in the meaning. She was not calling him enemy. She was not calling him stranger. She was asking him to stay. Daniel's breath caught. Stay, not as a prisoner but as something more, as protector, as family. The hall erupted in murmurs. Some voices carried doubt, others surprise, but none dared openly oppose her. She was their Queen, and her choice was clear. She reached for his hand, guiding it gently but firmly into hers, raising both so all could see. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked at her, at the child smiling up at him, and at the faces surrounding them. In that moment he knew what his answer was. He could not walk away. Not now. Not after everything. He nodded slowly, his voice steady though soft. I'll stay. Not as an enemy. Not as a soldier. But as someone who will protect what matters most. The Queen's eyes softened, the faintest smile touching her lips. The child clapped its hands, glowing brighter with joy. The hall filled with quiet acceptance. What began as shock slowly shifted into something else. Respect. From that day forward, Daniel's life was no longer bound to the war he had once known. He became part of their world, walking beside the Queen and her child. Some days he still thought of his people, of the battles continuing far away. But when he looked at the little one's trusting eyes and the Queen's steady gaze, he knew his place was here. His single act of sacrifice had grown into something far greater. It had bridged two worlds. It had touched a mother's heart. And it had given him a purpose beyond war. He had taken the blow for the enemy's young. And in return, the alien mother had chosen him. Forever. Daniel's steps were unsteady, but he walked beside the Queen and her warriors as they guided him out of the ruined building. The night air felt sharper now, brushing against his skin as if reminding him he was still alive. Every few seconds, the child peeked back at him from its mother's arms, its glowing eyes full of worry and trust. That look alone gave him the strength to keep moving forward. The path they took led away from the ruins and into a valley that opened like a hidden world. Daniel realized quickly that this was no ordinary place. It was a stronghold, a settlement, untouched by war's destruction. Lights glimmered faintly, not like human lamps, but soft orbs that floated gently above the ground. The structures around them curved and glowed with life, as though built from living stone and metal woven together. Alien faces turned as the group passed. Warriors stood tall, their expressions unreadable. Others, civilians, stepped back in silence, their eyes following the Queen and the human who walked beside her. Daniel felt every gaze pressing on him. To them, he was an outsider, a soldier from the other side. And yet, the Queen had not only spared him, She had brought him into the heart of her people. The queen stopped before a tall building that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Its entrance opened soundlessly as she approached, and inside, Daniel saw a hall lined with flowing patterns that seemed alive, pulsing with quiet light. The warriors bowed as she entered, and Daniel followed hesitantly. He was given a place to sit, a seat near the far wall, while the queen stood with her child close to her heart. A healer was summoned, another figure who carried the same soft glow in their hands as she did. They examined Daniel carefully, cleaning his wound with gentle precision. He sat still, the child watching him the entire time, as though making sure he was not in pain. The healer murmured something to the queen, who nodded thoughtfully. Then her gaze turned back to Daniel. For a moment, silence filled the hall, heavy but not unfriendly. Finally, she spoke in her own language, and though Daniel could not understand the words, the tone was calm, almost questioning. He took a slow breath. "I don't know if you understand me," he said quietly, "but I'll tell you anyway. I didn't protect your child because of orders. I did it because it was right. I couldn't watch innocence be taken away. War should not touch the young." The queen's expression softened slightly, though she remained composed. She looked down at her child, who clutched her hand tightly, then back at him. Her eyes seemed to study his every move, as if searching for truth in the way he carried himself. Days passed in this new place, though to Daniel they felt more like a dream than reality. He was given a space to rest and food that was strange but nourishing. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some eyes were curious, some suspicious, but none dared challenge him openly. The queen's presence alone shielded him. The child, however, showed no hesitation. Each morning it would come to his side, tugging softly at his arm, wanting to sit near him. It laughed in its soft musical way whenever he tried to mimic its sounds. Sometimes it placed small objects in his hands, stones that glowed faintly, or flowers that shimmered in colors he had never seen. Daniel accepted each gift with a smile, his heart warming more every day. The queen often watched these moments from a distance. She stood with the stillness of a leader, yet her eyes carried something gentler when they rested on her child and the human who now seemed to be part of their daily life. One evening she approached him directly. They sat across from each other, the child asleep nearby. The air was quiet, heavy with unspoken words. Daniel finally broke the silence. "I don't know why you allow me to stay," he admitted softly. "But I'm grateful. If it means your child is safe, that's enough for me." The queen's gaze was steady. She spoke slowly, carefully, as though choosing words he might understand. Her voice was low, but the meaning pressed through the barrier of language. "You are not what I expected." Daniel bowed his head slightly, unsure how to respond. "Neither are you," he whispered. In the days that followed, something shifted. The people who once stared at him with suspicion began to watch with quieter eyes. They saw how the child ran to him, how the queen allowed his presence near her, and how he never raised his voice or acted with cruelty. Slowly, whispers spread, not of an enemy but of a protector. Daniel began to feel the weight of two worlds pressing on him. He was human, a soldier of his own people, yet here he was, cared for by the very ones he had been taught to fight. He thought often of his comrades, wondering what they would say if they saw him now. Would they call him a traitor? Or would they understand even a little the truth he had found? That innocence deserved protection, no matter which side it was born on. One night the queen herself came to him again. This time she brought no guards, only herself and her child. They sat together in the quiet hall. The child curled between them, half asleep, its small hand resting on Daniel's arm. The queen's eyes softened as she watched. For a long time she said nothing. Then in a voice lower than before she spoke a single phrase. Daniel did not know the words, but the tone told him enough. Gratitude, respect, and something more, something unspoken, resting quietly between them. Daniel's heart ached. not with pain but with the strange realization that he no longer knew where he belonged. His own people were far away, locked in battles he no longer wished to fight. And here, in the heart of his enemy's world, he had found not hatred but trust. He was caught between two worlds, and for the first time he wondered if he was meant to choose only one. Daniel had always thought of himself as just another soldier. He was trained to follow orders, to keep moving forward, and to survive each day of the long conflict between humans and the alien race they were fighting. But deep inside, he had never been able to shut off the part of him that cared too much. Even during battles when smoke filled the sky and explosions shook the ground, he always noticed the little things that others ignored. The trembling hands of a frightened comrade, the soft cry of someone who was scared, or the way the stars still shone above even on the darkest nights. That day, he found himself far from his unit. The fighting had broken out suddenly, and in the chaos he had become separated. The ruined settlement around him was quiet now, the air heavy with dust and silence. Walls that once belonged to homes stood broken, their stones scattered across the ground. Doors hung from hinges and windows were cracked like mirrors shattered by time. Daniel walked slowly, his steps careful as though each sound might call danger closer. He told himself he needed to find his way back, but something tugged at him, pulling him deeper into the ruins. His heart was beating fast, not only from fear, but from something else, an awareness that he was being watched. At first he thought it was an enemy, someone hiding in the shadows waiting to strike. But then he heard it. A small sound. It was not the noise of footsteps or the click of a weapon. It was softer, fragile like a whimper. He stopped, holding his breath. The sound came again, a muffled cry, almost like that of a child. He turned his head, searching, his eyes moving over the rubble until they caught a flicker of movement. There, tucked between two fallen walls, was a small figure. At first, Daniel's breath caught in his chest. The figure was not human. Its skin glowed faintly, a pale shade unlike anything he had ever seen. Its eyes were large, shining with a light that reflected fear and innocence. It was a child, an alien child. Daniel froze. His training told him to be cautious. This was the young of the enemy, the very species his people had been fighting for years. Many soldiers would have walked away or even seen the child as a threat, but Daniel could not. The child's hands were pressed against its face, its body trembling. It looked so small against the broken stones, so lost in a world that was falling apart. Slowly, Daniel lowered himself to one knee. He did not want to frighten the child more than it already was. His voice was gentle when he spoke, though he knew the child might not understand his words. "Hey, it's all right, I won't hurt you." The child peeked through its fingers, eyes wide with both fear and curiosity. For a long moment it did not move. Then a soft sound escaped its lips, a sound that was neither language Daniel knew, nor a cry he recognized. Yet, the meaning was clear enough. The child was afraid and alone. Daniel's heart tightened. In that moment he did not see an enemy. He did not see a reason for war. He only saw a child in need. Carefully, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ration, bar the kind soldiers carried with them. He unwrapped it slowly, letting the child see what he was doing, and placed it gently on the ground in front of him. Then he pushed it a little closer to the child and waited. The child's eyes darted between him and the food. Hunger won over, fear, and with trembling fingers it reached out and grabbed the bar. For the first time, Daniel saw its lips curve just slightly into something that looked like relief. It chewed carefully, watching him all the while as if still unsure whether to trust him. Daniel stayed where he was, keeping his distance so the child would not feel trapped. His mind raced with questions. Where were this child's parents? Why? Had it been left here alone? Was this settlement once its home, destroyed in the chaos of the war? He did not know the answers, but what he did know was clear. He could not leave the child here. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the child's soft chewing and the distant hum of the wind. Daniel spoke again, not expecting understanding, but needing to say the words. "You're safe now. I'll make sure nothing happens to you." For the first time, the child shifted closer. Its eyes, still cautious, searched his face as though trying to read his heart. And then, in the smallest of gestures, it leaned just slightly against the stone that separated them, closer to him than before. Something inside Daniel shifted as well. He had been raised to see this species as the enemy, yet here was proof that innocence knew no side. A child was a child, no matter the world it came from. And if he walked away now, he would carry that choice forever. The air grew colder as the day stretched on, and Daniel knew he had little time. His unit would be looking for him, and enemy scouts could be near. But his thoughts were no longer on himself. They were on the fragile figure before him. He could almost feel the weight of a choice settling on his shoulders. The child yawned, softly, exhaustion clear on its face. Carefully, Daniel moved closer, his movements slow and calm. When he reached out his hand, the child flinched at first, but then stilled. His fingers brushed gently against its small arm, and he felt the faint warmth of its skin. "It's all right," he whispered again. "I've got you." The child's breathing slowed, and after a long pause, it allowed him to lift it from the cold ground. It was lighter than he expected, fragile like a bird. The child curled against his chest, still wary but too tired to resist. Daniel held it carefully, his heart thudding not from fear of enemies but from the realization of what he had just chosen. The ruins around him seemed different now, less like the broken remains of a war zone and more like the quiet stage of something important, something that would change him forever. He was no longer just a soldier searching for his unit. He was a protector, carrying the life of someone who had no one else. As he moved through the silent streets, Daniel kept his steps steady and his arms secure around the child. The stars above were beginning to appear, faint points of light in the dimming sky. He glanced upward, and for a brief moment he wondered if somewhere out there the child's family was looking for it. Perhaps a mother's heart was aching with worry, praying her little one was safe. That thought pressed into him, filling him with determination. He had no idea what would happen next. He did not know if his people would understand, or if the aliens would see him as a threat. But deep inside he knew this much: he had made the right choice. And as the child stirred in his arms, murmuring softly, Daniel whispered again, "I'll protect you, no matter what happens." The night deepened around them, and with each step, Daniel carried not just the weight of the child, but the beginning of a story that would change both of their lives forever.